I gotta be quiet.
Watch yourself, you're gonna lose.
Good evening. I will now call this meeting to order. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to adopt the final agenda?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next order of business is to adopt the minutes from our August 7th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to our discussion items. Our first item tonight is item 3.1, discuss ordinance for conditional uses. I will now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCain for a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. As you know, we're working on a potential zoning code overhaul, but some of our current standards need immediate attention. At our last meeting, we discussed fences, signs, and commercial districts. And tonight we'll take a look at our conditional use permit ordinance. So our current language was last modified over 25 years ago in 1998. It consists of 13 sections. It also has provisions to provide for bonding and agreement for dumping. It does not address any specific amendment procedures for conditional use permits. It also has sunset dates and annual review criteria which are non-conforming with state statute. And denials for conditional use permits cannot be reviewed for a year after denial. That is also non-conforming with the current conditional use statute language. So for the proposed language, we're showing clear definitions and intent and applicability and durations of conditional use permits, formalizing the process which we enact today with public hearings, ordinances, and recording them, creating a process for amendments, and then addressing nonconformities, and also providing a link to our shoreland district for conditional use permits that are required within shoreland areas as well. So next steps for an ordinance. Tonight we are looking for feedback and discussion from the Planning Commission. Then we would move on to the City Council's review. After that, we'll have a public hearing again with you guys with a formal draft ordinance similar to the one attached to the case. And then City Council would adopt the ordinance, and we would be able to implement the new standards with any new proposed conditional uses in the future. With that, staff can stand for any questions you may have, but really just looking for any initial feedback that the Planning Commission will have.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I guess just what's your timeline on that one coming back to us?
So we are hoping that this could just be combined with the other ordinances that we've been working on as one collective ordinance to make things easy instead of doing multiple public hearings with different timelines. So within the next month or two, hopefully.
Yeah, and so the updates, I think, reading were in reference to another example. So again, similar to last time we talked about this, are there any things that you think that it's not going to address that, you know, we should talk about? Or in its totality, is it improving on the things that are necessary, the nonconformance with the state statute, as well as address the clarifications in intent? So there's nothing that we need to discuss beyond those.
Sure. Chair and Commissioners, I don't see anything immediately that needs attention in this draft, but when zoning code overhauls are done, things tend to pop up and need revisions over time. That just tends to happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's the, I guess when you change an ordinance, what's the window for developers, like, is there a 30-day window, you know, as far as what's in the works or coming, or how soon do they take effect as far as down the road.
Yeah, depends on the ordinance and the city. Back in my former position in Ramsey, I know it was 30 days after adoption of the ordinance. I think the same standard applies here, but we've been implementing them directly into the code after adoption and after they're published in the local newspaper. So that could take an additional week or two for notification that an ordinance has been adopted. So I would say between 14 and 30 days.
No, I think the ordinance is well done, and since we're not in conformity with state law currently, my only input would be to accelerate adoption of this change as soon as we can. I think the developers would welcome the changes. They're more flexible, they provide sunset provisions, and it makes a lot of sense. So the sooner we can get it done, from my standpoint, the better.
Are there any projects going through that are directly impacted by this to that point even?
Not at the moment. So we have some applications. We're reviewing a sketch plat this evening. They will likely need a conditional use permit if they move forward with a preliminary plat submittal based on their proposal and the requirements of our proposed commercial districts that we have right now. This is all speculation. We haven't adopted these ordinances yet. So that's a potential current application that would have to abide by these new conditional use permit standards.
Any other comments, discussion? Commissioners, hearing no more discussion, this request does not require a formal motion tonight, so we'll move on. Our second item tonight is item 3.2, development updates. I will now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCain for a staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, at the last meeting, you had asked for updates on some of our recent projects, and staff suggested that might just be easier to bring forward a map to bring our new commissioners up to speed, as well as a reminder for our previous and current commissioners to understand where these projects are and what the uses are. So looking at our central business district, we have 5 projects in this area. Starting from the west, there's the Amira project for 147 senior living units and 2 single-family units. They did have their preliminary plat approved last July. Final plat is anticipated soon, but they did just receive another extension from council a few months ago on their preliminary plat approvals. So I would expect possibly sometime in the spring we might see them come back. Downtown West, that has also received final plat approval for the 145 unit apartment building. And then moving on to the Roars project a little further down Highway 5, as you all are aware, they're under construction right now. They're working on the 3rd story of 4 if you haven't seen it yet. The vet clinic is also underway with their project along Steiger Lake Lane. And they've got their site plan and building material application and their conditional use permit approved. And then Hometown Bank, they are working on a revised preliminary plat application based on the last review that was seen by you all. What I'm calling the Victoria East area, we have Madeline Trail, which in the 2024 aerial you can see is almost entirely developed. I think they only have another house or 2 under construction out there. Brookmore, the Lennar development, is moving along. All of their final plats have been approved, so they're under construction as well. And then recently we saw the fire station proposal. They got their site plan and building material application approved as well. Moving on to Hunter's Glen along Marsh Lake Road, they received their final plat approval for 21 single-family homes, and then the Shores of Marsh Lake development had 42 single-family homes approved. Both of those are also under construction at the moment. And then moving on to our South Growth area, there is the Hunters Brook development in red for 155 single-family lots. Along with that, there's the Hunters Brook Creekside development For 81 single-family homes, they are currently still waiting for an approval on the Conservation Residential District we talked about a few meetings ago. But both of their plats have been approved contingent on that comp plan amendment. So once that amendment is approved, they'll be able to move forward with construction. The Marsh Hollow development also has all of their plat approvals. They've finished the single-family rental homes and are constructing the townhomes on the north side. Victoria South had their preliminary plat approved back in May for 137 townhomes and a 144-unit apartment building. They have submitted the first edition plat application, so that will come forward at our meeting on September 3rd. Victoria Commercial is a sketch plat that we will be reviewing this evening. And the West Creek Village was a sketch plat that you saw at our last meeting, or the meeting prior to that, I think our July 16th meeting, for the townhomes and single-family development from Lennar. So that's just a general update for you all and give you some area context with some maps. So if you have any specific questions about that or any updates that I forgot, feel free to reach out and I can give you the updates.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
No, super helpful, thank you. Just a lot of activity going on.
Definitely.
Hearing no more discussion, this request does not require a formal motion, so we will move on tonight. Our final item for discussion and action tonight is item 3.3. Consider a sketch plat and annexation for the Victoria Commercial. This item does include a public hearing. I will now turn it over to City Planner Brian McCain for our staff presentation. Then I will open a public hearing for those in the chambers this evening that wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. We have received a sketch plat application for Victoria Commercial, which will be a commercial development. The sketch plat process is to receive initial feedback from the Planning Commission and City Council, so no approvals or actions should be taken tonight regarding the sketch plat, but we will need a recommendation from the Planning Commission on the annexation piece, which is the public hearing component. The sketch plat process, though, is to provide guidance and assist them with any subsequent preliminary plat, site plan, or conditional use permit applications. For the location and existing conditions, the parcel itself outlined in blue here is approximately 78 acres in size. They're looking at just about 48 acres for annexation, with the remaining 30 acres for the West Creek Village development, which we reviewed last month. The property is generally flat, vacant farmland. There are some overhead power lines, which I've highlighted in the image on the right, that run through the site. It's also north of County Road 10, Angler Boulevard, and west of County Road 11, Victoria Drive. So here's the sketch plat that was submitted. We want to focus mainly on the green parcel here, consisting of 4.26 acres. This would be our first South Growth commercial user, proposing a convenience store with gas pumps. And then the yellow parcel just to the south is another potential user that might be coming back to you soon. They are considering a 5-story mixed-use building with some commercial and approximately 200 apartment units. The sketch plat also shows a road network with the collector road extending from the Victoria South development to the north to come down and connect to this Road B, which extends from County Road 11, and then also comes down and connects to this Road C, which connects to County Road 10. The remaining uses that you're seeing here are just speculative. We're not asking for feedback from the Planning Commission on these uses or parcels, since all of these are unknown. We really want to try to focus this evening on the road network and the 2 potential uses that are coming. Now, looking at the comprehensive plan, this property, the northern portion of the site, the 2 areas that I just mentioned, are guided for flex employment in our comp plan. Our commercial district does allow for 30% of commercial areas for high-density residential between 24 and 50 units per acre. And our flex employment areas should really be for high-paying, high-quality jobs, business park setting, so think data center or manufacturing type uses. There's also a small area of open space on this parcel on the south end. So with that, a comprehensive plan amendment would be required to align a commercial type uses such as these with our commercial district. And here I've highlighted so that you can see better. Here would be the site of the convenience store and then the high density residential product. So these are the two pieces that would need to be changed from flex employment to commercial. Looking at the annexation request this evening, it's currently within Laketown Township. After it is annexed, it would receive agricultural zoning classification automatically. So the public hearing this evening is specific towards the annexation request. Our sketch plat does not require a public hearing, so any comments on the public hearing should be related directly to the annexation. The C2 commercial district, based on the draft ordinance that staff has prepared, it would also be the best classification for these types of uses regarding retail establishments and gas pumps as an accessory conditional use. So as we talked about earlier this evening, conditional use means conditional use permit. So those gas pumps are what would trigger the CUP requirement. Looking at the bulk standards for the site, based on the draft that staff has prepared, they would meet all of the minimum requirements. I highlighted two things that have changed from the staff report. We've raised the maximum building height to 50 feet for this district. That piece is still unknown for this proposal, so that will have to be evaluated. But then the staff report only indicated 10% impervious. It's closer to actually 40%, which is still well below the 80% requirement that we're proposing. So when we're looking at signage or architectural renderings, those should be provided with the preliminary plat to give you some more context for the area and how the building will look. Moving on to the parking. So automobile service stations require 8 parking stalls with an additional 4 spaces for every service stall, a gas pump essentially. So with the 48 parking stalls that they're showing, essentially they could have 10 gas pumps and meet our parking requirements. They can have more and obviously exceed those standards, but that will be evaluated with a preliminary plat submittal more closely. Moving on to landscaping, these are just some general standards that would be applicable at preliminary plat submittal. They would need boulevard trees along the public roads. They would need 30% minimum for open space areas based on our commercial district draft that we're working on. They would need to plant 1 tree and 1 shrub for every 1,000 feet of that 30% open space, which would result in about 56 trees, 56 shrubs. They would need foundation plantings along the pedestrian walkways and to the main entrance of the building. They would also need to have landscape islands and 4-foot tall plantings to shield headlights from the parking areas. And also a 30-foot landscape buffer on the north side of the site adjacent to the R4 residential area to the north for that Victoria South proposal. There aren't any trees on this site, so they do not have to go through a tree preservation evaluation. And then moving on to parkland dedication, as staff calculated it for the 4.26 acre parcel, it would come out to about 1/5 of an acre for land dedication or just over $22,000 if they were to go for cash in lieu of land. So no land was shown on the sketch plat. We're anticipating cash, and that's the Parks and Recreation Committee has not reviewed this yet, but they will review it once a preliminary plat application is submitted. And then I will pass it over to Kara for the city engineer review.
Hello, good evening. What do I have in what order? Okay, grading and stormwater management. This parcel is located within Carver County WMO, so they need to meet Carver County WMO rules. Wetlands, including buffers, need to be placed on outlots deeded to the city. What we anticipate being a little bit different as we start to talk about these commercial properties, unless a regional stormwater management approach is taken, if the landowner and the developer and the subsequent users of the property opt to do stormwater management on a parcel by parcel basis, that would be required to be maintained by the individual landowner. Instead of in residential developments, we put those in outlots that are deeded to the city. But when we're dealing with commercial and institutional uses, it tends to be a little bit different. So that would be worked through as part of a preliminary plat application. And then just a reminder to everyone that stormwater facilities need to have access provided to them and cannot encroach onto private lots in lot situation. Can I do myself? Okay, site utilities. So sanitary sewer and water are proposed to be stubbed to the property boundary through the Victoria South development. That's going to be in front of you for final plat approval here in the next month. So that will include a trunk water line and a trunk sewer line. The trunk sanitary sewer line will be extended through the parcel to serve areas both to the south and west of the parcel that is the subject of the sketch plat that you're reviewing tonight. And we are working on the sizing and routing for that trunk sanitary sewer right now with both this developer and the developer for the parcel to the north. The bigger item of note, and you've probably seen this a couple of times now as we've had different applications come in this area, well number 6 needs to be completed and permitted by the DNR for pumping before we can extend water outside of the current city limits. Well number 6 is nearly complete. We thought it would be complete, I think it was July or June was the last date that I had, but we are waiting for control panel materials that are delayed. So our current completion timeline is September. So we're on track to get that completed, but we are continuing to work through the DNR process to actually have permission to pump the well. So the folks in this room who are looking at this parcel, we've talked about this at length. They're well aware of the status of that. So that's not new, and we will continue to work through those steps as the project moves through the city's process. Of unique interest, I would say, for this area is planned improvements to the Carver County highway system in the area. So what you're seeing here on this map is actually County Road 10. So this is the intersection of 11, and this is Highway 10. So 212 would be to the right. The railroad tracks are to the left. What I wanted to note is that the county, applied for funding to do intersection improvements at the intersection of 11 and 10. That funding mainly targets the needed improvements on 11. If any folks drive that intersection regularly, there's quite a bit of challenges with stacking. The stoplights that were put up were temporary a whole lot of years ago. So the planned project is to get that converted to an appropriately sized intersection for the traffic existing and planned on 11. There also are planned improvements to County Road 10, so from 212 all the way to the railroad tracks. A corridor study was completed a number of years ago that took a look at this whole area and figured out what the transportation plans were for it, with one exception. So what you're seeing on the screen right here is a 4-lane divided roadway with a median down the middle. That wouldn't provide full access to the site. So if you take a look at the sketch plat that they provided, they're showing access on the south end out to County Road 10. I bring this up now, even though the focus of the conversation today is really those two uses at the north part of their parcel. This is going to be an issue that the city and the county are going to continue to need to work through. We identified at the time the corridor study was adopted that we did not concur with the vision for the corridor through here, but development was so far out that it didn't really make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time and effort talking about what that access looks like until we had an actual landowner that was at the table for development. So the area related to 10 will continue to work through with the developer and any landowners in the area and the county and the city, as now that we have development actually in the area. That corridor study also looked at County Road 11. So essentially, County Road 11 will need to be improved to where the improvements that we completed a couple of years ago with the Hunters Brook and Marsh Hollow project stops. So there's a divided concrete median that runs down that road. Those improvements essentially need to be extended to County Road 10 as development starts to come forward in the corridor. That corridor study is what the developer is using, both the Victoria South property and then the developer in front of you tonight, to plan for access to the site and for really right-of-way needs that the county is going to be seeking through any plat. So that corridor study information's been provided to the developer along with the CAD files. So, they're working with that information in real time. So that work is continuing on. But the subsequent question that the city council is going to have to work through is related to the timing of improvements to County Road 11. So this very fun map shows all of the transportation projects that are occurring and planned around the area between 2024 and 2029. The intersection we are talking about today is here. Where? Here's 212. It's funny, when I scanned it in, we lost, that's Marsh Lake Road. Yeah. Here's the railroad tracks right there, that one. The improvements in this area were originally scheduled for 2027. Those have been delayed to 2028 now. If you attend the Arboretum Area Transportation Plan, Highway 5 project open house tomorrow night, you'll see that the improvements to 5 for the Big 5 job are staged for 2027. We want to make sure that Highway 10 isn't under construction when Highway 5 is closed, because that would create even more headaches. So what we need to do is work then with the city and the county and the development team on probably looking at improving County Road 11 through their proposed access back up across the tracks to where the project ended, just north of the railroad tracks. So we've started some conversations with the developer in the county to try to figure out how we would facilitate getting that completed to meet the developer's schedule. So that will land in the council's purview to work through, but did want to note it for you all that as you're dealing with applications in this area, the transportation system is important, obviously, to serve these areas. And I think that's my last slide.
So as I said at the beginning, there is a public hearing required for the annexation request this evening. Sketch plat comments should be addressed outside of the public hearing. We did publish the public hearing notice in the Waconia Patriot on August 8th, and mailings were sent to property owners within 350 feet of the proposed annexation boundaries. It was also posted on the city website and at City Hall. So with that, staff is prepared for any questions you may have. We just recommend that you hold the public hearing first before moving on to any discussion related to the sketch plat.
Thank you, Brian. Does the applicant wish to speak? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Pat Rossi with Tradition Development. and just some history on our involvement with this site. We purchased the parcel here that we're discussing tonight as part of a larger purchase back in 2021, and I believe overall it was just over 90 acres, and we were primarily interested in it because the northern portions of the property are adjacent to our Huntersbrook development, and we, as you know, we've been here several times discussing those projects. They've been a little bit difficult, but we've gotten through them, and also working, have been in discussions with Lennar about an incorporation into their project to the west. So the piece that's commercial south of the railroad tracks, you know, we've held on to it. We knew that eventually the day would come where a appropriate user would be interested in developing that site, but we hadn't been marketing it. So just to let you know, we were contacted by a user and have a portion of that parcel under contract, have been contacted by one other potential user. And, you know, up until that point, we hadn't really done any planning on the site. So the planning that we've done, and I think was shown on one of the slides here, we did that in consultation with our commercial real estate partners. And, you know, they indicated to us where they saw the demands for different types of uses here. So we don't have any, I guess, interest in that right now, but they thought it would be best for us to show that as potential users and open the discussion here tonight. So with that, I'm here for any further questions too, and look forward to your action.
All right, thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the chambers this evening that wish to comment on this item?
My name is John White. I live at 5655 County Road 10, Chaska. I have two questions. One is the Lennar property that you showed tonight. It's at the new piece on the west end of all this development, north of the Twin City and Western at the railroad crossing. How are they going to only have access to that property from County Road 11? Because the only access to that property off of 10 is on the west side of the railroad track, and there's only about 150 feet there. So are they going to have access to that property from coming all the way off of 11?
Chair and Commissioners, if you want to talk separately about the West Creek Village development, I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, I didn't show on the map that they were going to County Road 10.
Yeah, so that is a different development separate from discussion this evening. I would be happy to meet with you after this meeting
I
and
thought there was two pieces, the commercial and the residential.
no, so the residential component that I highlighted in the development map update, the last report that we had, that's a separate discussion from the request this evening, and
then
I can talk to you after the
Okay,
meeting tonight.
The other issue, obviously there's an issue with Carver County, with County Road 11 and County Road 10, because I've been to public hearings. I live on 10, so I'm kind of
Right.
focused on that.
And
But
tonight we're, I guess, just not to cut you short, but tonight we're talking about just annexing this into the
you're
city.
on top of the annexation?
That's all we're really talking about.
okay.
The sketch plat will come back at a later date
Okay.
when we finalize, and then there'll be a public hearing on that to talk about access
Okay,
to County Road 10 and 11. As Kara said, it's all in the works, and the city's, you know, trying to work with the county on it. But tonight, we're just talking about bringing this piece of property into the city of Victoria.
okay.
All right, thank you.
And just for clarification for the commissioners and anyone in the audience, there will be 2 more public hearings in the future regarding this request. We'll have to have another one at preliminary plat, and then they will also have to do another one at final plat when the property is officially rezoned. So you should be getting 2 more notifications in the future if you did receive one this evening, and those would be the times to comment on the request this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to talk about the annexation of this piece of property? Hearing no additional public input, commissioners, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. I will now open the floor to the planning commission to discuss. Commissioners, any questions or comments on the annexation or the sketch plan?
So the annexation, we annex this into the city of Victoria, then we have to change the zoning for it. Then we got to make sure well number 6 works. Then we have to make sure that the parties interested in developing this area with tradition still want to do it based on how the county decides to revamp some of these streets. To me, I don't know the cost, and we're not supposed to be talking about cost, but the annexation of this property into the city of Victoria with so many different unknowns, how can you make me feel better about it, Brian and Kara?
Sure. We've had lots of discussions with the developer regarding all the components that you just mentioned. There is a plan in place for a lot of this. Some of it is still up in the air, but sketch plat is just the initial feedback to give them some assurances that you would be supportive of a project, essentially, if they did come forward with a preliminary plat. Now, if the concerns regarding the annexation piece are enough to, deter you from it, I mean, that's not staff's position to say, but I would just note that we do have a plan in place and we're working through those final details, and I don't think we're putting the cart before the horse in this scenario. We're just working through some of the challenges of the site.
That would be my concern, is putting the cart before the horse at this stage, just with all of the different variables that are coming into play, so that we don't have a situation where we're sitting on a parcel that we annexed, rezoned, and now nothing's happening because Highway 11 or County Road 11 is under construction and there's no longer interest to build there. That would be my concern.
The only thing that I would add is that the county has a development-driven policy that exists for how we move improvements that are needed on a county highway to meet development. So they have a policy in place. They expect this to happen. And really working through that is really best done with a developer who is at the table ready to do a project. It's very difficult to try to work through those things before somebody's at the table. So having them here and having them working through the planning process is what's going to allow us to resolve those issues that we wouldn't really work on if we didn't have a developer at the table today, just even with the other work that's on the city's plate. So I'm not concerned, certainly relative to the annexation or sketch plat review. We've known this is coming. So the good news is we have a corridor study that was finished and adopted that's guiding a lot of this. These things can be a lot more difficult if you hadn't already worked in collaboration on a vision for a corridor, then it gets a lot harder.
Can I ask when that corridor study was done?
29, it started before COVID and ended during COVID.
Okay, so we're going to consider it still relevant even though it's 5 years old.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
definitely. If you were talking about along 10, I'd be a little bit more concerned because we need more time to work through the access location on 10. But 11, we're confident with what's needed there.
I guess I don't know. I drive that every day, and that's a busy morning and evening. I know you guys are going through a lot of due diligence, but throwing a gas station right there, anyone who's coming, what is that, north on 11, turning into there is gonna be sitting there for 20 minutes. I mean, that's a tough nut to crack on how to solve that. Like that's my concern. Throwing a gas station there seems like, you know, you go a little bit further up to 11 and what is that, Marsh Hollow, or what is that, Marsh Hollow Lake? I can't think of that road. Basically the next intersection, and that one has the same problem. It's busy as all get up, and anyone tries to turn left, there's accidents probably every other week, if I had to guess. I don't know the right solution, but I'm a little weary of throwing a gas station there personally. I think that's going to create a tough spot for the rest of the community.
So there are a number of variables in play, as Christian pointed out. What is the downside, if any, of annexing this parcel to the city of Victoria if development is delayed for 3 or 4 years?
At the city's expense, none. At the developer's expense, that would obviously delay any sort of proposed project, which means we, on the city as a whole, our taxpayers would have to wait for some of these essential services that our residents are asking for. I guess that's the big thing for the city, is we want to try to develop these properties in accordance with our comp plans, such as these projects, where we want to construct commercial services for our residents. And if we have to delay that longer, that's a downside.
So other than potential revenue for the county, city, state, and services for residents, there's no financial impact for the city of Victoria?
None that I can think of at the moment.
If we didn't annex it, what would it be? It would just be town Victoria, or what? I'm sorry, I'm still learning all that.
The township?
It would still be within
Township.
Lake Town
It'd
Township.
still be within Lake Town Township. This whole area we've been talking about for, well, since I've been on the commission. And there was even one time there was a task group that was looking at what we want to do down at this corner. And it's always been pretty much, I mean, it's going to be commercial.
Right.
It's just, but we've just never, Ave had the ability to get water and sewer down there, which now we do. The developers, they purchased the property knowing that this is what it was going to be, and they've been holding on to it for however long, and I guess to me, what's going to go in there, I mean, it's just whatever use is, I mean, if the gas station thinks that that's what they want to do, and traffic wise, I mean, they would have their traffic study. I would guess that, I mean, at some time, going to the east in Chaska, that land will get developed or whatever. I don't know. I mean, that's Chaska's plan, not our plan. So, but there'll probably be an intersection going across, and who knows, maybe at that time they'll put a stoplight in. I don't know, or fix the intersection if the traffic needs to. I mean, it's all going to change in the next 15 years or more. It's a tough deal to try to design something, and you're looking at it, and it's like, well, this is what we want down there, and we got 2 places that are interested, so I guess I think the annexation should go through, and we start the process.
And the annexation's the whole lot, right? It's not just those A, B, or right? Am I understanding that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we're talking about this whole piece.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. The sketch plat is really relative to this site that we're discussing this evening, but the annexation piece is this whole area to allow some more sketch plats to come forward for any sorts of commercial uses that we could see down this area.
And Brian, there was a comment about the roads. Again, are those, the annexation is the one topic, but I do recall the roads, that these could theoretically change if the intent of the developer changes, okay.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, these sites that are being shown could play out a number of different ways, and that could restructure the road alignment that's being shown. It's all speculation right now.
Correct. So the one kind of concrete question, how far back is that proposed road onto County Road 11 from the intersection approximately?
Talking about Road
Are
8?
you talking about like this
Yeah,
intersection
in this
from the county
particular
road?
case, like, let's say there was a gas station on the north side of that would be how far away from the intersection of 11 and 10?
I would guess maybe about 300 feet. We haven't evaluated that, but
I
that's
think he's
gonna be
talking,
my
he's
rough
talking from
estimate.
County Road 10 up to.
Oh,
County Road 10, yeah, that
Okay,
kind
so
of
from
upper
here.
northwest. Yeah, just in terms of kind of to the point of traffic, and it seems quite a ways away from that intersection.
Yeah, so the full access intersection on 11 to the north of 10 is planned around the overhead power lines that run cross country. So if you drive that corridor and you picture where those big overhead power lines are, that's what you're seeing. This kind of hashed area in the middle of the screen is representing that power line easement. So you're seeing, we're working through two different possible access locations on either side of those overhead power lines. So quite a distance back from the intersection. I should note too that when the corridor study was completed, the team used the city's comprehensive plan to evaluate traffic. So that whole area was modeled with assumptions about what traffic generators would be in the area. Both the developer to the north and this developer would be required to submit to the county a traffic impact analysis that would take a look at the things that are being noted today here related to the intersection and how that'll function in the short term as well as long-term planning.
Thank you.
I guess for me, focusing on the annexation piece of it does make sense to bring it, like you were saying, Jared, to the city. Not getting caught up in each road and if there's a gas station or not.
Hypothetically, what happens if we don't annex it? I mean, can Chaska annex it, or can they?
no, this area is still within our orderly annexation agreement with the township, so it would just stay township until they come back and or attempt to annex again, really, is what it would mean.
Could they build on it as a township versus part of the city of Victoria?
Yeah, with Carver County zoning standards. Yeah.
All right, no one's ever explained that to me before, so thank you. I'm just playing devil's advocate, and I like to hear myself talk. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great thing. Yeah, there's going to be some programming that we're going to have to deal with, but putting some level of commercial in the southern development area for the city of Victoria is a great thing.
Well, it's part of the overall plan.
With some tweaks, we got to tweak some zoning if we choose to annex it.
Yeah, just to get the alignment.
So we don't have to.
And pretty much, if it's not, and if it's not a cost burden to the city, in taking it on, that's another
my question,
kind of factor. Yeah, that I was listening for. It's not like.
I mean, it just sounds like a question of when, not if, this area is annexed. So I don't see any downside to that. And I think for all the reasons we've been discussing, it's really premature to be talking particulars of the plan for the property at this point. There are just too many variables. But annexation makes a lot of sense.
Do we need a motion for annexation?
Yeah, correct.
And then, but not on the sketch plat.
Yeah.
Thank you. So are we going to discuss the sketch plat now?
Yeah, I would do that now and then save the motion for the annexation for the end.
Right.
My only question is if this is programmed and if they're buried gas tanks, does having a pond right next to it have any sort of negative ramifications to it? The seepage or,
Well, that's, roadway, that's kind of what the pond's for, to capture that instead of letting it go somewhere into the system. But all the tanks are regulated through the Minnesota Public Commission.
Commissioner, can I say?
Sure.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Lisa Watson, and I'm the real estate manager who is working with a developer on this site. We currently don't have a store in your community, and so the pond is specifically there to service our tanks and our runoff. We regulate our building and what we adhere to very strictly. We are known in our communities to go above and beyond what is regulated for tank storage and storm ponding, and that's why you see the 4.26 acres is because we want to have an on-site storm pond to help with the regulation of runoff and what happens on our site. So we can give you more detail, and I can give you more detail during preliminary and final plat. But I can tell you that we take the utmost care to our sites when it comes to building our stores and our underground tanks.
So this, just for clarification, this is not an existing pond, it's a catch basin.
It's a catch basin. Yes.
I guess my question is it in the right spot? Maybe that's better served during the preliminary situation.
I would want to defer when my team does the store engineering team does this layout, and what they look at is they look at what the current elevations of the site are and where it would best be served so that we're going downward. We're also looking at, are we a barrier even from a aesthetic standpoint to the traffic, to the community, and where it would best be served. Now, can it be moved? Absolutely. But right now, this is where my store engineering team felt it was best served on the location currently. But again, we look at all that as we go through approvals and can make those changes as needed.
It slopes down there, back to that road.
Thank you.
Any other questions for?
I mean, 30-foot berms are, the berming, is that all the way around the entire area, or is that only required along the county road?
That berm that I mentioned earlier would only be required to separate the R4 apartment building from the commercial use per our buffer section of our landscape code.
Thank you.
Can I answer any other questions that you guys might have? One reason I will answer when some of you ask maybe about timing, for this development, we are on almost a 2-year build out because of our build out schedule. And so we know from a timing, 1.5 to 2 years is what we look at, and it can happen sooner or later. But this part of the process is important to us, so we know we can keep it on our Gantt chart and keep the project moving to ensure that it gets completed for the community that we're going into.
And so playing the contrast to that, if it wasn't, the annex wasn't approved, would it pause that schedule or?
It could, because our concern would be the approvals and what happens if it gets delayed again. So we always try and get approvals sooner than later in the process, so we know we can keep the process moving, because there's a significant due diligence timeline that we go through, environmental 1, environmental 2, going through everything that Brian and Kara require, just looking at the guidelines for the site itself, making sure we have all that with civil, and when we when we go to approval. So we just like to be able to keep things moving.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
A question for Brian. Sorry, thank you. Is that trail going to follow all the way through on 11? Is that the plan right now?
Correct.
Any more discussion, questions? Hearing no more discussions, can I ask?
I'd move that the city council annex the parcel for further development. That good enough?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't have a motion for you
was gonna
up on the
say-
screen this evening. Usually I have one, but I forgot it this.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Joe's.
Yes, that's sufficient.
Yes, we're just approving the annexation.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. This concludes our discussion items for this evening. Moving on to our miscellaneous section of the agenda. Staff, you have any miscellaneous items tonight?
Yes, just two quick things. So our other alternate planning commissioner, Matt, resigned from the planning commission. He's just having too much travel with his work currently, so he has to be placed down on our on-deck list. And we are reaching out to our two on-deck candidates from the city council meeting when they brought up Aaron and Matt and Joseph to see if either of those two on-deck individuals would like to become our new alternate. And then our meeting on September 3rd is still scheduled. I know it's the day after Labor Day, but we do have two items anticipated for that meeting. The first one being the Victorious South first edition that I mentioned in the development map update presentation, and then we will also be looking at some of our cannabis zoning regulations in anticipation of that moratorium ending. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, do you have any miscellaneous items? Just suggest that if you're interested in the Arboretum or the 5-way-5 project and everything that's going on, there is a meeting tomorrow night at the Arboretum from 4:30 to 6:30. It's your chance, another chance to give your input on what you, or see what's going on and give your input to if you want to change something. So. Hearing no more items this evening, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you.